In the Income Tax Act 2025. Today is day 28 and I am studying section 29. So section 29 deals with the deduction related to the employee welfare. It has basically three things that will be focusing on: the employer's contribution, employee's contribution, and the national payment scheme. Firstly, the deduction for employer's contribution. It goes under section 29(1) and it says the deduction will be allowed if the employer makes contribution in one of these funds: the statutory provident fund, recognized provident fund, approved, or any other fund as per law. Then if an employer makes payment in these funds, then it will be allowed as a deduction subject to section 37, which means that it has to be made before the due date of filing return. Otherwise, it will be allowed in the year in which the payment is actually made. So for claiming the deduction in the current year, we have to make the payment before the due date of filing returns. And here are few examples of funds for which the deduction is not available. These are all the unrecognized, unapproved funds or any other funds which are not part of this list. What actually makes this list is section 29(3) here. It says no deduction is allowed for amounts paid by an employer towards setting up or contributing to any fund except where specifically permitted. So there will be no deduction for any payment to any of these funds except the funds that have been permitted, which are these funds and this NPS fund. Otherwise, all the other funds are prohibited, means we can't claim deduction for those funds. And this is any other fund as per law, means which we are obligated to fulfill as per the law. We don't have an option for those funds. And then comes the employee's contribution towards welfare fund. It is the case when the employer, when paying the salary of the employee, deducts some amounts for payment of these funds. So in this case, the act says that we have to make the payment before the date of filing of return of income. Then only we can claim deduction. If we do not make the payment in due time, we will not be able to claim the deduction in the future as well. So there's a point of difference for employees contribution and employers contribution, which I'll discuss in a second. But first, here's an example of employees contribution case. Here BB Virtual's private BBVPL is paying Mr. Deepak a salary of 70,000, but before paying 70,000 it's deducting 5,000 and 1,000 for PF and ESI. This 5,000 and 1,000 BBVPL has to deposit in registered provident fund account and ESI account before the due date of the return of income. Then only it will be allowed. Otherwise, it will be considered as the PGBP income for the current year. That's tax year 2627 of BB virtuals in this example. Now moving on to the difference between employers and employees contribution regarding the due date of payment. We have an example where in case of employer's contribution, the company makes payment on 15th of December 2027, which is after the due date of filing return. So it will be allowed in the tax year 26, disallowed in the tax year 2627, but it will be allowed in the next tax year here in tax year 2728 in accordance with section 37 of the act. But this is not the case for employees contribution, because in this case it will be, if the payment is made after the due date of filing return, it will be disallowed in this year as well as in the next year as well, means our benefit will lapse. We will have no income tax benefit regarding this payment. Then we have gratuity. In case of gratuity, if we make a provision in our books of accounts, we cannot claim deduction for that amount. However, uh, if we deposit that amount in an approved gratuity fund, it is allowed as a deduction. And if we actually make payment of the gratuity amount, it's also allowed as payment. And also in cases where gratuity is due, means an employee is retiring and we have to make the payment of gratuity to him, it doesn't matter whether we have paid or not. As long as it's due to that employee, we can claim deduction for that amount. And the last thing is NPS, National Pension Scheme, or Central Government Pension Scheme. This is the case of employer's contribution. The deduction is lower of the two. It's actual contribution or 14% of the salary, whichever is lower will be the deduction allowed to the employer. But again, here is the condition of section 37, means we have to again deposit it before the due date of filing return. Again, we can claim the deduction in the next year if we don't deposit it in due time. Here the meaning of salary can be noted. We have basic plus DA. DA is which one? It's that DA which forms part of the salary as part of the retirement benefits. It's that DA, no commission, nothing else. Basic plus DA forming part of retirement benefits. That's it. Then we have section 31, which deals with bad debts and provision for bad debts. Firstly, we'll deal with it from the perspective of a normal business. So, in a normal business, assume Mr. BB sold some goods to Mr. Lucky for like 500,000, and he declared that income in his return of income, and then he could not recover the money from it. मतलब ये bad debt हो गया. तो इसमें कितना डिडक्शन मिलेगा? इसको मिलेगा उतना डिडक्शन जितना एक्चुअली उसको बैड डेट हुआ, regardless of how much provision he made. Doesn't matter if he makes a provision of full 5 lakh rupees or whatever amount, it doesn't matter. He'll get the deduction for the actual bad debt. जितना 1 लाख 2 लाख रुपया bad debt हो गया उसका deduction मिलेगा. Now there's a point to note that it should be the sales, it should be related to sales. Means अगर हमने कुछ लोन दिया है किसी को और we cannot recover that amount, it's not considered bad debt in this section, and we are not allowed deduction on that except money lending business. सिर्फ मनी लैंडिंग बिजनेस में, क्योंकि दैट्स योर कोर एक्टिविटी ऑफ द बिजनेस, सो इन दैट केस इट्स कंसिडर्ड एज बैड डेट एंड डिडक्शन इज अलाउड. Then we have some conditions to note here. Bad debt should be written off in the books of the SSC in which the deduction is claimed. Means हमें कुछ ऐसे provisioning वगैरह नहीं करनी है bad debts की, सिर्फ कि in the hope कि future में हो जाएगा recovery or whatever. We have to write it off. Means debtors भी हमें कम करने हैं और bad debts भी write off करनी है. PL profit and loss में expense out करना है bad debts को. सेकेंड कंडीशन, द डेट शुड हैव बीन ऑफर्ड फॉर कंप्यूटिंग इनकम. मीन्स अगर हमने सेल ही नहीं दिखाई तो हम उस सेल पे फिर बैड डेट्स भी क्लेम नहीं कर सकते. पहले सेल दिखाई होनी चाहिए, फिर उसके बाद हम बैड डेट्स कर सकते हैं बुक्स में इन सच टैक्स ईयर और अर्लियर टैक्स ईयर. मतलब हमने सेल रिकॉर्ड की होनी चाहिए, चाहे बुक्स में या अगर अर्लियर टैक्स ईयर तो रिटर्न में भी हो जाएगा. आफ्टर दैट नो नीड टू प्रूव दैट डेट्स हैव बिकम बैड, क्योंकि इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल टू प्रूव कि डेट्स हैव बिकम बैड. We cannot prove it. So they have, it was a condition before 1989 that you had to prove the debts have turned back, but it's so lengthy and so costly that it exceeds the amount of the bad debt. So this was introduced to ease in the provision, and there is no need to prove that debts have become bad any longer. Now regarding these two conditions, there is a specific point to be noted. This is a condition कि written off होना चाहिए बुक्स में और इनकम रिकॉर्ड होनी चाहिए. बट इन दिस केस वेयर the income has not been declared as per ICDS. ICDS means Income Computation and Disclosure Standards. This is a case where we have declared some income in our return as per the Income Computation and Disclosure Standards, but in our books of accounts we have not declared it as income in compliance with Ind AS or AS. So in that case, if we deal with a bad debt in such cases, means we cannot recover such an income which we did not record in our books of accounts in the first place, these two conditions would not apply. Means we cannot write it off because we have never recorded it in our books of accounts. So there's no question of writing it off, and still we can claim the deduction on such amount. There is an example of this, government grant. In case of government grant, if we comply with Ind AS and we make our financial statements, then we'll only record such income only when the conditions is satisfied. Means we become eligible for government grant, means we earn the government grant. But in case of ICDS, it says we have to record such income earlier of received or condition satisfied. So it's possible that we have recorded such income as per ICDS but did not record such income as per Ind AS in our books of accounts, and then it turns bad. So in such bad debts we can claim deduction. It was a special point about it. Then comes the recovery point. In case we have bad debts and we have claimed deduction on it, and then subsequently in the future years we recover such amount, then it will be taxable in the year of recovery. जिस साल में रिकवर किया it will be taxable under the head PGBP. Here is an interesting table to understand in this regard. So it's an example. I will take books example, it's much simpler. So let's assume we have claimed bad debt of ₹100. 100 की बैड डेट हमने क्लेम की, फिर इनकम टैक्स में अलाउ पूरी 100 की बैड डेट हो गई. Then whatever amount we are able to recover from such bad debt will be taxable under the head PGBP in the year we are able to recover it. It's simple. But in cases we have claimed deduction of 100 but we were allowed only deduction of rupees 60 or rupees 60 and then disallowed rupees 40. What happens in case we recover such deductions? So we have two cases here, 50 and 30. So in case the amount is, let's simply address this. हमने 100 रुपये का हमने बैड डेट क्लेम किया, लेकिन उस पर हमें 60 रुपीज़ की ही डिडक्शन मिली, 40 की नहीं मिली. एंड देन वी वर एबल टू रिकवर 50 रुपीज़. सो व्हाट हैपन्स इस, हमारे पास 100 रुपये थे, उसमें से 60 की डिडक्शन हमें मिल गई, बचे 40 रुपीज़ जिस पर डिडक्शन नहीं मिली. तो उन 40 रुपीज़ में से हमें 50 रिकवर हो गए, 40 रुपीज़ में से 50 रिकवर हो गए. तो पूरे वो सेट ऑफ हो गया, 40 पूरा सेट ऑफ हो गया, लेकिन उसके अलावा और 10 रुपये हमें रिकवर हो गए in excess of both allowed and which was not allowed. So that excess amount will be taxable under PGBP. It will become more clear in this example. हमारे पास 100 रुपये की डिडक्शन हमने क्लेम की, फिर उसमें से 60 रुपीज़ अलाउ हो गई डिडक्शन, एंड देन डिसअलाउड वाज ₹40, एंड देन वी आर एबल टू रिकवर ओनली 30. तो इसमें 100 में से 60 के हमने डिडक्शन ले लिया, बचे 40 रुपीज़, उसमें से हमें 30 रिकवर हो गए, बचे 10 रुपीज़ जो अभी भी रिकवर नहीं हुए, और फाइनल सेटलमेंट हो गया इस इशू का, मीन्स मे बी कोर्ट सेटलमेंट और वट एवर, बट वी विल नॉट बी एबल टू रिकवर एनी फर्दर अमाउंट फ्रॉम दिस. तो बचे वो 10 रुपये, वो हमें कभी रिकवर नहीं होंगे, वो 100% गारंटीड बैड डेट्स हो गए हमारे लिए, तो उस पर हमें फर्दर डिडक्शन मिल जाएगा. सो it is simple. If we are able to recover in excess of the amount we were not allowed earlier, then we have to pay tax on that excess amount. If we were able to recover amount which is less than the amount which we were disallowed, then we'll be able to claim deduction of the further allowed. It's simple. 100 rupees we claimed, out of that we were able to claim recover 30 rupees. We claimed deduction of 60 earlier, and then we'll be further allowed deduction of 10 rupees, means we were allowed deduction of 60 plus 10, which is 70 rupees in total. Out of 100 we got 70 rupees ki deduction, and 30 we were able to recover, so it makes sense. Then last 2 points in this regard is firms claim bad debt. So it's an example where a firm is which has a bad debt claim of 5 lakh rupees and it was allowed, and then the firm was dissolved and the partners after few years were able to recover the bad debt. So will it be taxable? No, it will not be taxable in the hands of the partner. Why? Income tax says that the person claiming the deduction, which is the firm in this case, it has claimed the deduction, it has enjoyed that benefit, and the person recovering the bad debts should be the same. The partner and the firm are not the same, there are two different people because the firm has been dissolved, so it will not be taxable in the hands of partners. And then there is another case of succession, means the firm converting into company, firm converting into LLP, or unlisted company converting into LLP. In those cases, if the firm has debtors of rupees 10 lakhs and it gets converted into company, so what will it do? It will transfer all its debtors to the company, and after transferring such debtors, in case those debtors turn bad and we are not able to recover that amount, we can claim deduction for such, क्योंकि अब इनके debtors बन गए, they can legitimately claim deduction for anything that turns bad in this case. After that we have the case of banks, which is section 31(1). In the case of banks, what happens is, firstly, in case of an Indian bank, whether it's scheduled bank or non-scheduled bank plus any cooperative bank, how much deduction a bank would get for bad debts? It's a fixed amount. It's 8.5% of gross total income, which is before this deduction obviously, or any deduction under chapter 8. And in addition to that, there is a further deduction of 10% of aggregate average advance made by all rural branches having population of less than 10,000 people. What is this aggregate average advance? It means the advance outstanding on the last day of each month of tax year divided by the number of months. Means we'll take the advance at the end of each month at Jan, and if we have 10 crore, Feb and we have 20 crore, then 30 crore. Similarly, for each month we'll take the advance balance at the end of the month and then divide it by the number of months. This will give us the average advance of one rural branch, and we'll take aggregate average advance of all rural branches, that, and then 10% of that will be allowed as deduction. This is the case of Indian banks. Now let me explain it with the help of a simple example first. There is an ICICI bank. Let's assume its gross total income is 800 crores and the aggregate advances are 600 crores. So how much would be the deduction as per section 31(1)? It will be 8.5% of the gross total income, which comes to 68 crore, and 10% of the aggregate advances, which is 60 crore. A total of 128 crore would be allowed as deduction. This 128 crore, as I have clarified here, is the amount which will be allowed to be debited to the profit and loss account as per the Income Tax Act. Now in case there are the actual bad debts of 130 crore. So how much would be allowed a deduction? It will always be 128 crore. But in order for understanding how the treatment would work, it's an illustration. When we credit the 128 crore to our profit and loss account, which we are allowed to credit, we will subsequently credit the provision for bad debt amount with the same amount, bad debt account with the same amount. Let's assume an opening balance of 15 crore and then 128 crore, which is the limit as per 31(1). So we have total of 143 crore available for us to set off our actual bad debts, and we'll utilize it. So out of 143 crore, we will utilize 130 crore and we'll have a closing balance of 13 crore. But this is to be noted, we cannot claim deduction for this amount. We'll be only claiming deduction for this amount, 128 crore, and then we have closing balance of 13 crore, which will carry forward and use it next year accordingly. This is a normal case where the actual bad debts are within the provision we have. But what happens in case this actual bad debt exceeds the provision we have available with us? So in that case, let's assume the actual bad debts are 162 crores. Firstly, we have provision for bad debts 128 crore as calculated earlier. This goes into the credit of the provision for bad debt account 128 crore. So a total of 143 crore is available for setting of this bad debt of 162 crore. And we'll use the entire provision first. 143 crore is used entirely to set off the bad debt. After that, we have no closing provision left. Then what happens with the amount left? 162 crore minus 143 crore, which comes to 19 crore. For that amount, we are allowed to claim a further deduction by debiting it to the profit and loss account as per the Income Tax Act. So we'll deduct the excess amount which we are not able to claim using our provision to the profit and loss account here. To actual bad debts, 19 crore. This is as per section 31(2). So how much deduction did we get? Under section 31(1) we got 128 crore, and the further deduction we got under section 31(2) of 19 crores. Then there is a small case of banks. What happened there? They used to create multiple provision accounts in order to misuse this excess provision, the provision for claiming excess of bad debts. They used to create separate provision for bad debts accounts, urban and rural. So in this example, I'll briefly go over it. We can see that in the rural provision account we have an excess of 27 crores, but in the urban account we have exhausted all our provision and still have some bad debt left, and then it goes here to claim an excess amount as deduction. So in total we got 128 crore, and the further deduction because of splitting these accounts and claiming excess deduction we got 22 crores. So in total a deduction of 150 crores was claimed by banks for many years, and then there was an amendment and it was corrected. So now the SSC is only allowed to maintain one provision account. It doesn't matter what you do in your personal books, but as far as income tax is concerned, you have to maintain one provision account and use that to set off your bad debts. Then we have the case of foreign banks, public financial institutions, state financial corporations, state industrial investment corporation, and non-banking financial companies. In case of these, there's a deduction of 5% of GTI before this deduction and deduction under Chapter 8. And there is no deduction for that aggregate advance for rural branches. That does not exist. There's simply a 5% deduction. That is it about it. Then we have the last section for today, which is section 32, other deductions. In this we have section 32A for today, which talks about the bonus or commission paid to the employees. It has a condition that it should not be payable as profit or dividend. There is an example for it. Let's say the company is sharing profits to all its partners. Let's say partnership is sharing its profits to all its partners at rupees 4 lakh rupees to each partner. To the sleeping partners, it's giving 4 lakhs straight. To the two active partners, it's giving 50,000 as share of profits and then 3,50,000 as bonus. This is clearly trying to avoid paying the profits, and this is disguise in the name of bonus. So it is simply treated as uh, payable as profit, so it is regarded as profit. Same is the case with dividend. So this bonus should be purely bonus and not something else in disguise. Should not be profit or dividend in disguise. It is allowed to be claimed as a deduction, but again subject to section 37, which means we have to make the payment of this bonus amount before the due date for filing income tax return. Then there is no restriction on the amount of bonus. We can pay any amount we want. There is also a case plus Shashun Chemicals and Drugs Limited. It's a Supreme Court judgment where there was a dispute between the company and the employees regarding the bonus, and the company paid the bonus amount to a trust, which then made the payment to the employees on the settlement of the dispute. So in this case, the AO argued that the payment should be made to employees before due date, but it was not possible since there was a dispute. So the company made the compliance by paying it to the trust first, and the trust made the payment to employees. The company got no benefit out of it. So the court ruled that they should be allowed deduction under section 32A.